The green flag is out. The world's fastest flying start. And the 1969 500-mile race is on. Foyt and Andretti come by, and Foyt takes Mario Andretti. A car's on fire. Going by in front of us, number 38, Jim McElreath. And here goes Mario. Mario's going back to try to catch A.J. Foyt.
Rubio's out of the car. They're pushing the car.
And here's the checkered flag for Mario Andretti, winner of the 1969 500-mile race.
Victory Lane here in Indianapolis is a place that every driver dreams about. For Mario Gabriel Andretti, one of the greatest drivers to ever challenge the Brickyard, it's a place he's been able to call home only once on race day. The year is 1969. There is war in Vietnam. Richard Nixon is President of the United States. 400,000 rock and roll fans gather in a field in Woodstock, New York. In July, Neil Armstrong becomes the first man on the moon. The amazing Mets of New York capture the World Series, while the football Jets and a brash young quarterback named Broadway Joe boldly predict victory, and then eliminate the powerful Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III.
I didn't know Woodstock from any other stock in those days. When you were in racing and traveling all over the world, you didn't really see that those other things were going on that much. You almost dial out things other than those that apply directly to the race.
While radical upheaval is tearing at America's seams, Indianapolis in 1969 is still experiencing growing pains. Her parking lots are gravel, not paved, and open trailers carry the racing machines to the track, unlike the million-dollar rigs that tow today's rockets.
One of the things I remember about 1969 is that the cars were still arriving on open trailers. Bobby Unser was the defending winner and the defending national champion, and the car that he drove in the race was a black and yellow checkered Bardol Special. And I can remember that probably mid to late April, sitting in the parking lot of what was then the Holiday Inn on an open trailer, just sitting there with no tarpaulin, no covering whatsoever. And that was a state-of-the-art team.
There is no such thing as a VIP suite in 1969. That's still 4 years from becoming a reality. And main entry to the track is, as of yet, at the southwest corner of 16th and Georgetown.
In 1969, there wasn't any of that. There was 2.5 miles of asphalt, there was 33 pits, a lot of hard-working men in the garages and out in those pits, and somebody was trying to win that race, and that's basically what it was all about.
The old wooden structures that represented the garage area had burned to the ground once before in 1941 and had since been rebuilt. But by 1969, they are again beginning to show some age, and women are not yet allowed on the premises.
There was quaintness about it. Nothing was up to date in Gasoline Alley, and that's sort of the way everybody liked it at that time.
I really liked it. I like the garage area now, but it was more homey back then, and the cars, you know, it was a lot more to the driver, I think, then than it is today. Technologies just went so far today. It's unbelievable. I never thought that I'd see the day that I could run Indianapolis flat-footed.
To be honest with you, it was inevitable that it was going to grow to where it is today. You know, I'm just saying, I'm not saying that it was any better then, I'm just saying it was really different.
It is a time of change for the rest of America, but for the Brickyard, where tradition is sacred, change is not exactly part of the vocabulary.
Back in those days, there was a lot of tradition. The tradition was such that those old pieces and parts stayed. And we who were there enjoyed them at that time. Now the new things, as you go down and see what's transpired, is progress.
There was a great deal of camaraderie in Gasoline Alley. Here they are together, and if somebody needed a part, all they had to do was go next door and get it. And there was a real fraternity, and I think probably in that era, the term racing fraternity had its truest meaning.
We traded back and forth. I mean, if somebody needed a camshaft or somebody needed a set of connecting rods or a piston, I mean, it was more or less an open book, and, you know, we ate together, we lived together, we towed to the races together. I mean, it was really a close family group.
You wanted to keep racing against these guys, and he wanted to beat them on the racetrack. He didn't necessarily want to beat them in politics or by not getting them apart or whatever. I mean, you wanted everybody to show up because you wanted everybody to be in the race, and then you wanted everybody to be running at the end, and you wanted to win then.
Everybody was good friends. At 6 o'clock came, you went over and sat down on their tire and had a beer, and they come over in your garage and had a beer, and nowadays you got to have a password to get into each other's garage.
Well, we used to go out on the racetrack and leave the garage doors open. It was more friendly.
In those days, I say, you just went from one garage to the next, and no problem. You just, you know, you had all these characters still around. A lot of these old midget drivers, you know, they used to come over, and there's so many stories to tell, of course.
I remember going out and playing ball, and what I really remember about that is, you know, we'd just go out in tennis shoes or something, you know, and your feet would slide off and then you'd fall or something. I thought, I'm going to fix these guys. I'm going to go get some regular baseball shoes with spikes in them. And so I tried that, and that was a serious mistake. You need to have a lot stronger ankles and legs at that time to wear spikes to play ball.
I can remember Billy Vukovich and myself, we'd even play Frisbee out in the garage area, in the parking lots. So today, if you tried to do that, you'd probably have a crowd of a couple of hundred spectators trying to play too.
The cars aren't known as Indy cars, but rather championship cars. And pit stops for tires are less frequent on race day.
Very seldom, in fact, I can't recall any team, regardless of what it was, that would buy 4 brand new tires for a race. They always used what they had. They always used it and utilized it in the best manner that they could to be competitive.
Driver uniforms are also rather unique compared to their aerodynamic counterparts featured some 25 years later.
It was just an open-face Bell helmet and with a pair of goggles and a red bandana across my mouth. And we thought that was the ultimate. That was as far as the helmets would ever go, because I used to think back to the helmets that my dad wore, and I thought, well, those things are really obsolete.
The purse at Indianapolis is still a year away from surpassing the $1 million mark. By 1993, Indy's purse will total more than 8 times that amount.
When I look back, you know, there's a degree of nostalgia, you know, looking back, and I'm glad that I was part of that era.
The 500, the greatest race in the world.
Mario Andretti came to the Speedway a highly touted rookie in 1965 and finished 3rd, winning Rookie of the Year honors. He captured the pole in each of the next 2 seasons, setting 1 and 4 lap marks in each case. For 1968, Andretti thought that if driving a car was fun, then owning a car would be even better.
In the middle 60s and up to the late 60s, it was very fashionable, I think, for many drivers to become their own, to have their own teams, such as you can see Bruce McLaren, Dan Gurney, Jack Brabham, and so on. Circumstances were such that Al Dean had died, Dean Van Lyons, and that he was my owner up to that point, so I was able to buy his assets and not really change too much, keep Clint Braun or Jim McGee, keep the entire team intact. Only I started realizing, I said, this is really not what I want to do. I was looking for somebody to buy me out, and that came fairly easy too. Andy Granatelli, he and I were always good friends, and I went to him. I said, if you'd be interested in a snap, he says, I'll do it.
Granatelli, the highly publicized and very colorful STP team owner, thrived on the unusual, especially at Indianapolis. A veteran IndyCar owner, Andy Granatelli returned to the Brickyard in 1961 after purchasing the powerful Novice. The Novice, though, would make a lot more noise than money for Granatelli.
We had so much power, it was unbelievable. We had 300 horsepower more than the competition. I mean, but it never worked out that way on the track. I mean, there was always other things that occurred.
By 1967, Granatelli came up with his most controversial machine yet, the radically different turbine car. The turbine was powered by a helicopter jet engine. But the Wishmobile, as it became known, would quit only 4 laps from the finish, when a $6 part cost Parnelli Jones and Andy Granatelli a certain victory.
not winning the race in 1967 was probably the best thing that happened to me, because I literally got really $100 million or more in publicity and became the sentimental favorite of the world, so to speak.
In 1968, an instant replay for Granatelli. Joe Leonard led in a turbine, but suffered a flameout just 9 laps from the finish, ending his day. For 1969, Granatelli has signed Andretti.
The fact that he was a very visible man, I think it worked great. You know, I have no problem if a star is next to me. You know, when Paul Newman walks next to me and he gets all the cheers, I love it for him. I don't think that I'm being slighted. I think they see me because they see him first.
Andretti will drive a new 4-wheel drive Lotus Ford at Indianapolis, a revolutionary aerodynamic machine and one which Colin Chapman helped develop. While the Lotus is a technologically advanced machine, it is far from practical and far from safe.
I think the car was really like a flash in the pan, you know, just quick. It was advanced technically and had some good aerodynamic features on it. I stole some bits and pieces later on to put on the Bronner Hawk.
I had my doubts that that car would ever have finished the race because it had so many new things in it. I'm talking Clint and I had a real suspicion about the hubs on the car. And we had talked to Lotus about it, the fact that we felt that they weren't strong enough, you know, for the loads and the speeds that they would be seeing in Indianapolis. But Chapman convinced us that because of the spread of the load with the 4-wheel drive, that, you know, they felt that they were adequately designed and they were going to be strong enough.
I don't think the car was really built strong enough, as we found out. He was trying to interchange pieces, vital pieces such as hubs and all the suspension. And as we could see, if it was built light enough to go in a Formula One car, it was not going to be strong enough to last at Indy. So, you know, hubs kept breaking, and lucky we didn't get hurt, actually.
We were so suspicious that every night after the practice, we would pull the rear hubs off the car and magnaflux them. And I can remember the night before we had the accident with Mario in the car, the hubs were out of the car, they were down to magnaflux and checked and put back in the car, and I mean, they didn't have 5 laps on them the next day when the right rear hub failed.
For the new Granatelli-Andretti combination, success is still a ways off.
Good afternoon from Indianapolis. From the Master Control Tower here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, this is Sid Collins reporting the first day of time trials for the 1969 500-mile race.
Saturday, May 17th. Rain showers dominate the first day of qualifications, keeping the track empty. In the day's lone attempt at the pole, rookie Jigger Soroy records 3 laps at better than 161 miles an hour. Soroy's crew, though, waves off the 4th and final lap, even though, as it turns out, his 4-lap average would have given him the pole position, since he has the fastest speed on the first day. Under 1969 Indianapolis qualifying rules, not everyone gets an equal chance at the pole in the event of a first-day rainout. Soroy would have held that position on race day, unless later bumped by a faster car after the 33-car field was full.
The announcer there, when he went through 3, the track was still a little damp maybe, but not dangerous. And he's talked about how he wiggled over in the corner, and that helped get Meyer nervous. He made a decision then as he came down for the checker flag to put up the yellow. Wouldn't have been a really legitimate pole, but it would still have been nice to add.
Sunday, May 18th. For the first time in the recorded history of Indianapolis, the entire first weekend of qualifications is a total rainout. Of notable interest is the sudden absence of 4-year sensation Al Unser of the Vels Parnelli team. Unser's hopes evaporate the night before when he suffers a compound fracture of his left leg while riding a motorcycle in the track's infield.
It was really a downer, you know, and that's what I get for messing around.
Amazingly, Unser's injury leaves team owner Parnelli Jones with thoughts of a possible comeback.
I almost got back into our car and drove it. I came very, very close to doing that.
3 days before the final qualifying weekend, A.J. Foyt turns in the fastest speed of the month at better than 172 miles an hour. 4 minutes later, Andretti pulls out to challenge the new record speed. Coming through turn number 4, a break in the right hub causes the right rear tire to fly off. Andretti crashes, suffering burns above the upper lip and cheeks.
We could hear it, the explosion of the machine against the wall up in the 4th turn. It was an incredible, incredible slide, incredible accident, incredible crash. And we were all amazed that Mario got out of it as well as he did and was able to run in the race.
We had never run it on full tanks. When the hub broke and I went in the wall, we were running just very little fuel. Besides, so even full tanks, can you imagine, that could have been a bigger fire, God knows what.
I was sitting in the grandstands outside the track between turn 3 and turn 4, just more towards turn 4, so that I could watch the cars as they went around turn 4 and came out onto the straight. Well, Mario in the red sort of wedge Lotus came out of the turn and everything was okay, and then all of a sudden it did something funny, and next thing you know, he was into the wall. Not a big hard hit, more of a glancing hit, and I think there was a little bit of fire, and I was very concerned, and then pretty soon I could see Mario undoing his belts and he's getting out.
We all went down there because, especially with Clint, you know, he didn't want anybody to touch anything because they might damage the damaged parts.
The one thing I remember is they're bringing the car back on the wrecker, and I mean, this car it's destroyed big time. And Clint Bronner's standing out there, and it's bringing the car, and that Clint walks down there and he gets his arm out like this, and he's pointing that guy in the wrecker, and he says, "Don't you dare bring that car back into this garage like that. Just put her out there in the trash," you know.
With the Lotus out, Andretti will be forced to qualify his aging domestic-bred Hawk on the second Saturday. But the Hawk itself is nearly the victim of a promotional accident.
Mario Andretti was going to appear on a TV show that was visiting Clues Hall here from Dayton or Cincinnati, Ohio. And so they asked us to bring a car out, and so made arrangements with Clint Bronner to take the STP Bronner Hawk out. So we took it out to Clues Hall, and Don and I were pretty enthusiastic about getting on stage, but we rolled the whole front end off of it almost into the orchestra pit. We fortunately got it back before anybody knew about that, and for years we didn't tell anybody, and finally we laugh about it now. But
Indy Granatelli had his name on the car. I've never really understood who actually owned that car. I have the feeling that Andy Granatelli claimed that he owned the car, but I'm not sure that he actually did.
We had no idea of what we had for a spare car. We had no idea how it would go on the super speedway, and it was certainly not set up for that, believe me. We had radiators and everything hanging all over the place, so aerodynamically was not a very pretty thing.
We knew the Hawk could run 500 miles, and I think, we really, it wasn't it was disappointing because the other car was so fast, but by the same token, the pole doesn't win you the race.
I felt that was a much better car for Mario, and that he had a much better chance of winning the race with it.
I remember, I think it was Dave Laycock, one of the chief mechanics, a good friend, that said, "You guys don't know what you have back there in the garage." And he was right.
The 500, the greatest race in the world.
There he goes, A.J. Foyt in car number 6.
In qualifying, A.J. Foyt sets a blistering pace with a 4-lap average of better than 170 miles an hour, but fails to break the track record set only 1 year earlier by Joe Leonard in the Turbine car.
Ladies and gentlemen, out to sit on the pole, Mario Andretti.
Andretti surprises most in his resurrected machine, averaging almost 170, good for the middle of the front row.
The total time, Mario Andretti, 3 minutes 31 and 9,500 seconds. The speed, 169.851. And he now moves alongside A.J. Foyt, who is still
Andretti's fast time may be partially due to a unique tire stagger that Bronner and McGee have stumbled onto in the spring and have saved for here at Indianapolis.
We had a little combination there, a little tire combination, stagger combination that we would do ourselves. I mean, Firestone wouldn't do it. And that's why even the Hawk was so fast at Indianapolis that year. And you know, we had a little bit of an advantage because we were running stagger at that time and nobody else was running it.
Another trick that Andretti, Bronner, and McGee have stumbled onto involves the front end of the car. In 1969, flippers are on occasion attached to the front of the car to stabilize it. In the case of the Bronner Hawk, however, only the left front wing is ever attached. The result, better downforce for Mario through the turns on race day.
Well, it was a matter of balancing the car. And I had the availability of both, and I tried both. And I just didn't have enough rear downforce to balance that, so I figured I'll just use one. And in those days, I said, they were stationary. We're not even adjustable, so we just planted it on there and with the same angle that he had it on the Lotus. And it was just a stab at a dart, but it worked.
As qualifying continues, a first-year player at Indy in 1969, Roger Penske touts rookie Mark Donohue up from the sports car ranks to drive the brightly colored blue and yellow Sunoco car. Donohue qualifies fourth at better than 168 miles an hour. Last year's Indy champion Bobby Unser runs 4 laps at better than 169 in the black and checkered Bardol machine, good enough for the outside of the front row. Track record holder Joe Leonard opts for Dan Gurney's new Eagle chassis in 1969 to replace the turbine, and car owner Smokey Unick in exchange for Granatelli. Unick is known for a bit of flair himself. Only 5 years earlier, he had tried unsuccessfully to qualify the now infamous sidecar, a creation in which the driver was seated next to the rest of the machine. Lloyd Ruby, the popular Texan, struggles on qualifying day, blowing an engine during the morning practice session.
We actually had blown the engine that morning, and Bob Tattersall and I came out here and rebuilt an engine. It had an engine sitting out here about ready, but needed to put the cams on it and the accessories and everything else. While they were pulling the engine out the speedway, Bob and I loaded the engine in El Camino, took it into the speedway, drove every place we shouldn't drive and everything we should do wrong, got right into the speedway, didn't have any problem until we got to the guard that let us in the garage area, and he wouldn't let us in. With an engine sitting in the back of a truck, it was kind of funny. So anyway, we got it in there, stuck the engine in, and to get a spot in line, we pushed it out to the track to finish putting it together.
We're trying to get up here to qualify, huh? Hey, we have 19 cars in the field. We've been starting to push up. They say they're going to go and not going to go. Well, somebody has just hustled the car up here to the line. And it turns out to be Lloyd Ruby at car number 4. Slowed down a lot on that one, didn't he?
The number 4 Wynn Spitfire Special will line up 20th on race day. Dan Gurney had finished second to Bobby Unser the year before, but in 1969 is aiming one position higher. The self-developed Gurney Eagle chassis and Westlake Ford engine, the only stock block in the field, are his weapons of choice.
We were a little short on power. We built a car that, as I look back now, I realize I never once drove at Indy in a car I had raced before, which was not a very bright way of doing it. Although a lot of people did that sort of thing in those days. We ended up being hurt by relatively minor things. But if you have a relatively minor problem in the only race of the year, why, of course, it's a major problem.
Gurney has to settle for the inside of row number 4. AJ, Mario, and Bobby Unser will make up the front row on race day, while rookie Mark Donohue, Gordon Johncock, and Roger McCluskey will comprise row number 2. Jim McElreath, NASCAR's Leroy Yarborough, and Gary Bettenhausen complete row number 3 for race day. Of notable interest is rookie Peter Revson, who on his third and final qualifying attempt makes the field as the gun sounds. He'll line up 33rd and last for the 53rd edition of the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
The 500, the 500, the greatest race in the world.
Remember those old dirt tracks, AJ? The dirt would just heat up the engines.
2 champions sharing a winning formula.
Haviland Formula 3.
My favorite win was going to be in '69. I had to give it to you. You shouldn't have even made a half a lap.
Race week 1969. For pole sitter A.J. Foyt, a victory at Indy in '69 would make him Indy's first four-time winner. As it turns out, it will be 8 more years before that feat will become a reality.
In '69, I knew we had a superior car, and it seemed like them are the races you can't win. Something always small happened.
For Mario Andretti, it's a time of solicitude and anxiousness. Chief Mechanic Clint Brawner has added a small oil radiator to Andretti's machine in order to alleviate excessive engine heat.
It's an interesting story here about this car, to be honest with you, because as I said before, it was never really sort of set up for the super speedway. So as you can see, we had some overheating problems. So we just hung an ugly radiator right out in the air, and that was solving the problem. And we decided, boy, this thing is, you know, is going to rob us of a lot of speed. So to qualify, we decided we'd take it off, and then we'll try to put it on, you know, for the race. Well, they did not allow us to do that.
We went and decided we'd put another water cooler underneath the car in behind the seat back, and we would suck air from the bottom of the car up and, you know, blow it out. And we just didn't have any practice to see if this was going to work or not, but we went ahead and did it. And I mean, it was a huge modification. And I can remember I worked the night before the race. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and we just finished it.
After all the rain, race day morning arrives warm and sunny, and race strategies are varied.
You're aware of a huge crowd we've been waiting all month, and then as the atmosphere gets heavier and heavier to where you can finally almost cut it with a knife, it's a very special period that's probably unique to Indianapolis on race day morning.
For Lloyd Ruby, always a threat on race day, pit stop strategy on this day will play an important part later in his race.
You know, when you want me to come in the pit, give me pit 3, pit 2, pit 1, I'll be in then. They give me 3 chances to make sure I catch the board. The calls come right in, though. Yeah. Cross it all. We're going to try to come in about 58 to 60 the first time. Yeah. But give me 3 laps, that way I'll make sure I don't catch the board.
And I long for my Indiana home.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
The Chevrolet Camaro pace car with Tony Hulman on board leads 33 drivers and 13 different chassis makes through the parade laps.
The green flag is out, the world's fastest flying start, and the 1969 500-mile race is on. Turn 1, come in, Mike Ahern.
And Mario Andretti dives low into turn 1 to take the lead, followed by A.J. Foyt, Bobby Unser. Andretti's out in front, turn 2, Howdy Bell.
And we can see them coming into this turn. It's Mario Andretti in the bright red number 2, A.J. Foyt in second, Bobby Unser third. Car number 82 is in fourth place, and that's Roger McCluskey.
Mario Andretti coaxes the old hawk past pole sitter Foyt and leads the first 5 laps.
Some of the best racing ever was in the 60s, was when AJ was on top and Mario was trying to knock him off. And those two went at it, hammer and tong, and that was as good as racing ever gets.
Rookie Bruce Walkup never completes a lap. Transmission failure sidelines him before the race even begins. Bill Vukovich joins him 1 lap later when he suffers a broken rod. AJ finally gets by Mario on the front stretch, and Andretti and Roger McCluskey become the challengers.
Roger McCluskey was one driver that could always be a factor. I mean, he never underestimated Roger McCluskey.
One thing I remember about 1969 was that the first half of the race was about as competitive as any that there had been. Some of the mid-60s races just weren't that exciting from the standpoint of wheel-to-wheel competition. But in 1969, the first half was very, very competitive with Foyt and Mario and Lloyd Ruby, and also Leroy Yarborough was sort of kind of the sleeper that, or at least not really the sleeper, but the surprise. A lot of people, I don't think, had expected him to be that strong.
Art Pollard lasts 7 laps before a broken driveline ousts his STP wedge. On this May the 30th, 1969, his teammate would be in for a much better fate. On lap 24, Jim McElreath's engine comes apart and catches fire in turn 1. A spectacular but dangerous sight.
A car's on fire, going by in front of us, number 38, Jim McElreath. Pick it up, Mike Ahern.
Okay, Sid, he is on fire. The tail section of the car is burning. Jim's got his hand up in the air, waving the traffic by him. He's up along the outside retaining wall, still spitting fire and smoke. He's holding up both hands. The cars are slowing down along the track apron. McElreath is climbing out of that smoking car. He's okay.
Gary Bettenhausen is out after 35 laps with a spent piston, but finds it hard to recollect some 25 years later.
I remember dropping out of so many races here that it's hard to say that, yeah, I remember it in '69. I remember dropping out a lot of them, though. I remember '72 quite well.
It was in 1972, in fact, that Bettenhausen would lead the race only 18 laps from the finish, only to have a faulty ignition strip him of his best chance for victory in some 21 Brickyard attempts.
Foyt is in, the hoses are connected. They're fueling him up now, and 15 seconds just might do it.
Lap 51 now. Both Foyt and Andretti pit. AJ is out in 28 seconds, Andretti in 43. The lead is now Lloyd Ruby's. Amazingly, Ruby has charged from 20th to 1st in just 130 miles. It's the 3rd time in 4 years that he has led the 500-mile race. Despite their pre-race pit stop discussion, however, Ruby leads for less than a lap before mistaking crew chief Dave Laycock's "you're in first place" pit board cue to mean one more lap and then pit. He comes in earlier than needed.
Not only ran out of fuel or came in. He was. That means he was leading. The lap before. I know it. That's what he came in for.
I think we were real surprised at being up as far as we were that early in the race. But he was passing quite a few cars back and back. I really wasn't surprised that we were, running well, but to be leading was sort of a surprise by the first stop.
Ruby's bad luck puts Wally Dallenbach out in front. 7 laps later, Dallenbach relinquishes the lead when he too pits. Foyt is back in front, but the car doesn't seem to be running as well as it did before. And on lap 79, both Lloyd Ruby and Mario Andretti roar by AJ Foyt to run 1st and 2nd.
As the race progressed, my main competitor really became Lloyd Ruby. And basically a lot of the same car. The car that was, chassis-wise was very close, was a copy of ours.
69, we was running very good. Andretti and I would kind of swapping the leads out back and forth. I did know that he was having problems because he could run hard for 5 or 6 laps and he would start overheating.
Early on, the temperatures were up in the 240 range in the oil and 220 in the water. And I figure, well, it's going to be another short ride, so we'll keep on trucking.
As the battle for the lead continues, Andretti catches Ruby and passes him on the main straightaway.
Yes, and Mario Andretti has just taken the lead from Lloyd Ruby. It happened here in turn number 1 when he ducked inside, sprinted out in front of Lloyd Ruby, took him here and led him going into turn number 2. And
on lap 87, an extraordinary sight. Arnie Knepper's rear suspension brakes bouncing him off the 4th turn wall. Knepper climbs out of the car and begins waving off other drivers.
I thought it was kind of strange. I think I would have been sitting down in there hanging on, make sure nobody hit me. He wouldn't have been in a very good position if somebody had hit him.
I saw it, yeah. I saw it. Well, that was Arnie.
By lap 99, AJ sits in the pits, the result of a split manifold in need of repairs. 23 minutes later, he's back on the track.
What happened, I had new manifolds on my other cars, and I was doing a lot of work with the crew, and we didn't have time to put a new manifold on my car, and it just cracked right around the well about midway through the race, and I lost all my boost, and then we had to take it off on a pit stop and run back to the garage area and weld it and put it back on.
At the halfway mark, the 53rd Indianapolis 500 is now a battle between the surprising Mario Andretti and the even more surprising Lloyd Ruby. For one of these two popular drivers, the day will end on a less than pleasant note. Lap 104, race leader Mario Andretti comes in for his second stop of the day, and Lloyd Ruby inherits the lead from Andretti. Ruby makes his second stop on lap 106. For Lloyd Ruby, disaster is right around the corner.
That's the one I hate to even talk about because that's the one that hurt the worst. I made just a regular routine stop. I thought they fueled from both sides. The fuel man on the left, Dave Laycock, he had already filled the front tank up. I can't see the man filling the back tank. And that's before we had anybody up in front of you to tell you to go or wait. And so I started trying to move. And I guess I moved about, not over 3 foot. And the hose wasn't disconnected, the fuel hose. And that's when they pulled the side of the tank out.
I think the fans were aware of it. I certainly was aware of it. And on the public address system, anytime the leader comes in, and he was the leader, by he, Lloyd Ruby was leading the race, you call attention to the fact that the leader of the race is in the pits. So your eyes were already on him, and you were timing the length that he was in the pits. So here he is, returning to action, and whoa, what's happened? Sure, everybody knew about it.
They told me to get out, and I still couldn't realize what happened. And I even got out and seen all the fuel running out. I got out and walked just a little ways and had to go back and look at it again. It seemed like I was having a nightmare.
I can remember Dave Laycock storming back to the garage area. He just had his head down and he walked from the car all the way back, never broke pace, and nobody went out to sort of say I'm sorry or anything. I mean, he was really upset and didn't want to talk to anybody. And I remember that was a disappointment because Lloyd Ruby was very, very popular at that time. And more than being popular, I mean, he was a threat to win. He would have made a tremendous winner. And, here was yet another one that he wasn't going to win.
That's the ones you sit up and dream about because it's just one that should never happen. But it did, and that hurt the worst because it just human. It was my fault too because I should have waited just a little bit longer. But it just happened.
I think that he was the race winner. I think that he would have run Mario hard enough that it would have broke him if, in fact, he just didn't pass him and lead him.
You never know how that one might have gone. If I would have had to really push hard to stay in front of him, I think the gearbox might have gone. So, but we'll never know.
With Ruby out, Andretti appears to lead at ease, and on lap 153 makes his third and final pit stop. But exiting the pits, Andretti hits crew chief Clint Ronner with his left front tire. Ronner is all right, but Mario will have to be careful that victory #1 at Indianapolis is to become a reality. Bobby Unser, the day's other front row starter and last year's winner, has been suffering from handling problems all afternoon. 5 stops for tires place him well out of contention. Dan Gurney, meanwhile, after dropping well back at the start, has quietly worked his way back up into contention. The only stock blocker in the field of turbochargers, by the 3/4 mark, he's running second. The final 50 laps. Mario leads Dan Gurney by a comfortable margin. But something is wrong with Mario's car, and Gurney knows it.
I heard in '69, Mario ended up with one tooth missing off of his pinion gear. Not the ring gear, but the pinion gear. I mean, there wasn't that many teeth on it. And he was kind of going along, limping along, and I had lost entirely the shock absorber on the left rear. So you could just go like that with it, But so if I got into the turn a little bit too fast, the rear wheel would start going bump, 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 bump. Pretty soon it was just, shaking the whole car around. So we were both limping probably 7 or 8 miles an hour slower than we should have been running.
Andretti's machine holds together lap after lap. Each turn represents another potential pitfall on the famed 2.5-mile oval.
I can remember him saying to us he could smell the sandwiches and the hamburgers going down the back straightaway, and you know, when he'd feel himself or sense doing that, then he would say, hey, you better get your mind back on what you're doing here instead of enjoying yourself.
Well, it's again one of those classic distractions. Is, you know, you're in the car 3 hours and so on and so forth, and then somebody's is barbecuing steaks or something, or hamburgers or whatever it was. It smelled awfully appetizing, and you smelled that. So, you know, you'd think, oh, gee, I'm ready for one of those, you know.
Car owner Andy Granatelli has been there before. Twice his turbines have led the 500, but quit less than 10 laps from the finish. Suddenly, Andretti's nearly into the wall, and Granatelli's heartbeat quickens once again.
He came out of 2 and he really lost it one time real big and got up in the gray stuff, and he was sideways, and you know, that kind of got his attention, and that got him back into the concentrating mode again.
I remember coming up on Mike Mosley. You know, I had just a moment's lapse, and I really came up on him, and I had it faster than I thought. And I had to just turn right in the middle, turn 2, and then capture it again. And that was a good wake-up call for me, so I paid attention after that.
The final laps, and Andretti's lead over Dan Gurney is better than 2 laps. Gurney himself is unable to push Andretti.
I was hoping, sure, but I knew that it wasn't dependent upon my car being able to run him down so much as it was on them having a problem.
Mario's car just did finish. I mean, if that race would have been 505 miles, I think it would have expired. I mean, Clinton or McGee, one of us telling me later, he says every needle on the dash was laying over to that side with about 100 miles to go, and when it got done, it was fried. I mean, the rear end was fried, the engine was fried, everything was gone on it.
There was really no liquid oil lubrication in the gearbox left. And that's what I was really hearing, like the last 10 laps, everything just felt rough, you know, but just kept praying, you know, stay together now, stay together, and it did.
And here's the checkered flag. Pat Vadan holds it and waves it for Mario Andretti, winner of the 1969 500-mile race.
I learned not to count my chickens before they hatched, so they would have had to hatch just when I got that checker flag. And that was one sight of relief, because I wanted that so bad.
It was great to win. It was great to win with Mario.
There's something about the magic of Indianapolis is there. I think it always was.
2 or 3 times, I think, in your racing career, you get goosebumps, you know, when things happen, and I did that day. I mean, you get this little chill, you know, that kind of is a feeling that, boy, how did, you know, I've been blessed.
For any race driver that ever set foot there has that dream, cross that finish line first, see that checker flag first. And when you see it, I'm telling you what, it's such a wonderful feeling.
I think back upon it now, and it's like I've always thought, you never know how close you are to winning a race. I mean, you can be and have so many things go wrong and problems, but you never give up because you never know how close you are to winning, and certainly that day that was the case.
I just wish every driver that ever set foot there could experience that, because it's a thrill of a lifetime.
Dan Gurney wheels his Eagle home in 2nd place, while 1968 champion Bobby Unser captures 3rd. For Gurney, one of Indy's greatest driver car owners ever, 2nd place will be as close as he will ever get to victory lane.
The only happy guy is the guy who finishes first, of course. It's just, that's what you're going there for, and second's better than everything else, but it's not that good. Too bad we don't get to go back and live our lives over again, huh?
The small track master, Mel Kenyon, logs 4th. while Peter Revson comes home 5th despite lining up 33rd and last for the start. Rookie of the Year honors go to Mark Donohue, who brings Roger Penske's Sunoco effort in at 7th place. Donohue will win this race just 3 years down the road. 1994 marks Mario Andretti's final attempt at the Speedway. Along the way, he has captured 3 poles, 11 top 10 finishes, and over $2.5 million in Indianapolis career earnings. And yet, for perhaps the greatest driver ever to challenge the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, 1969 stands as a testament to his only victory at the Brickyard.
I said, gee, now that I broke the ice, now I think I just have a great feeling that I'm going to have a few more under my belt. And, you know, I was wrong.
I was in a position to do very well there, to win there on quite a few occasions. But I could tell, hey, I mean, you only get that one shot a year, and it doesn't surprise me at all that he hasn't been able to do it.
Naturally, you know, the old people want to pull for the old people. No, it'd be nice to see Mario. He deserves to win another race here. I mean, he's been top, you know, here. He's a great race driver. He's run awful hard in his whole career, and I'd be happy for Mario to see him win going out that way.
If I can't win it, I would love to see Mario win it, because the man definitely has earned it, deserves it. And the other reason is he's older than I, and that would make me feel good if he won the race.
He's capable of winning the race anytime. He has been through the years, and I would like nothing better than the 25th anniversary of that first victory than to have him wheel into victory lane and finally, after all the high drama of these many, many years, get victory number 2.
We've talked about it, about tarnishing your image and the fact that, you know, you should go out and leave a sport when you're still, you know, competitive. And I still think Mario is competitive, and, you know, he wants to be known as a competitor when he leaves. And I think this is going to be it.
If you're competitive and you're there with a good team, a team that's got all the ingredients, gosh, you just don't want to leave anything home. You just give it a go. And I think, you know, coming to 1994, I just feel that, yeah, I want to give it another try. I'm not ready to just totally walk away yet.
Reserved for him. But for one brief moment in 1969, the spotlight was his alone at the greatest single-day sporting event in the world, the Indianapolis 500-mile race.